welcome back to Room 237, and I'm back with another Italian Giallo review. And this is another one that I got off of trashpalace.com, and it is the 1974 The Killer Reserved 9 Seats. Excuse me, Reserved 9 Seats. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of this cover. I much prefer the one that you saw in the thumbnail with the hand with the nail through it. This is a scene that happens in the film, of course, minus the bras, but oh well. So 1974, kind of the year Giallo was taking a dip. It was the crossover year between Giallo and Poliziotteschi. But it was directed by Giuseppe Benatti, if I pronounce that correctly, which this is his only Giallo, and this was his last of 9 films, so that's kind of fitting. And it was written between him, Paolo Levi, and Biagio Proietti. Stars Rosanna Schiaffino, Chris Avram, Eva Samaris, if I pronounce that correctly. But also some familiar faces like Chris Avram was in A Bay of Blood. Andrea Scotti was in So Sweet, So Dead and The Fifth Chord. And Howard Ross was in Naked Girl Killed in the Park and New York Ripper. And the music was done by Carlo Savina, which that name sounds familiar. I'm just going to see if he's done anything else. The Young, the Evil, and the Savage, which is Naked You Die, which I have done. Suitcase for a Corpse, which I have not done yet. That is one that I would like to get. Naked Girl Killed in a Park. It's not a, it's not a Giallo, but Lisa and the Devil by Mario Bava. Reflections in Black, which is one that I would like to get. 9 Guests for a Crime, which I will be doing shortly. I think The Perfect Crime is also a Giallo. Yes, it is. But anyway, and yes, came out in 1974. This falls under the category of one of my favorite types of Giallo, which, even though much of Giallo has been inspired by the works of Agatha Christie, the ones that really look at the 10 Little Indians type story, that's what this falls under. I wouldn't say it's as good. Like, my favorite one in that category would be The Killer is One of 13, which this movie's basically, if you take The Killer is One of 13, the sort of family curse element of the Red Queen kills 7 times, which is one of my favorite Giallo, and put a little supernatural twist on it, and make it not the most sensical of Giallo. I mean, when everything came together, I kind of found myself with just as many questions as before, but that's kind of what you get. And I did read this one thing that someone said where pretty much everything about this film we've seen done better elsewhere. Like, the 10 Little Indians aspect was done better in Killers 1 of 13. The family curse element was done better in Red Queen Kills 7 Times. But I still enjoyed this film. I'm kind of a sucker for movies with limited casts, limited settings, especially the Agatha Christie style story. But instead of like a villa or a resort or something like that, like Killers 1 of 13 or even 10 Little Indians, this one is in a classic theater, and it's a great set. The set design was very well done in this. In fact, the first time we see the theater, because it even opens up like Killers 1 of 13, showing all the different people in their cars kind of showing up. they're out in the lobby talking for a little bit, and then it's this great shot from like the stage, but like up. So we see all the seats, we see all the soapboxes. Has like this Willy Wonka type music. Beautiful shot. It's not super stylish, but there are some great shots in it. There's this one sequence where there's this sort of, it shows it's coming from a tape, but I think it's supposed to be implied that it's the supernatural. This monologue from Othello that goes on for a few minutes, and it's just a view of the dark stage with the curtains kind of blowing. That's about as stylish as it gets, but it's a great shot. The look of the killer is rather creepy. It's like a black cloak. It's green underneath with like this, I don't know how to describe the mask. It's like this smiley face mask with like curly orange hair, like a big curly mustache. But yeah, it kind of has that chamber drama type feel to it, which I do enjoy. And basically the story is there's this wealthy aristocrat named Patrick Devenant or something like that, who he's played by, if this thing would just work for me, Chris Abram. It's his birthday, the 15th of February. That date is important. And his family has this theater, which has been maintained but not used for the last 100 years. So for his birthday, he invites this group of people. They come over to check it out. I think even use the stage a little bit, because once they all get there, they kind of just start throwing lines out. And of these people, there's his sister Rebecca, played by Eva. I always struggle with these names. Cizemeres, and her lover Doris, played by Lucretia Love. Patrick's ex-wife Vivian, played by Rosanna Schiaffino, and her new husband Albert, played by Andre Scotti, not Andrea, Andre. And then Patrick's daughter Lynn, played by Paola Senatori, her boyfriend Duncan, played by Gaetano Russo, Patrick's fiancée Kim, played by Janet Argan, and her ex Russell, played by Howard Ross. And Howard Ross is even like sort of like the Simon Andre, or Andre's, I can't remember his name. He was in Killers 1 of 13. He was in Forbidden Photos of a Lady Above Suspicion as well. He's kind of the same character, just kind of a loudmouth, kind of the asshole character that is having an affair with someone else, and just, he even makes comments to Patrick's sister's lover, Doris, saying that he wants to screw her. I'm guessing because he can't, because she's a lesbian. There is even a scene that's kind of like the dinner scene in Killers 1 of 13, where all the dirty laundry of the characters come out. Only it's not as long, not as interesting. We pretty much just find out, you know, kind of like when everyone's motive comes out, which is, you know, Patrick could be mad at Vivian because it's his ex-wife, and Albert could be holding a grudge against Patrick because, you know, that's the ex-husband. Also, you know, Russell could have a grudge against Patrick because Kim left him to go to Patrick, even though Kim and Russell have their affair and they're planning to do something in order to get Patrick's money. Like, her engagement to him is fake anyway. They're just using it to get his money. So everyone kind of has something. And the daughter and her boyfriend kind of take a back seat. Like, they're not in it that much. At least not up until the end. And they start getting killed off one by one, and the killer is one of them. Oh, the supernatural element is that there's this guy in a, I think it's called like a Nehru jacket. That's how they keep, that's what they call him, the guy in the Nehru jacket, who shows up and then disappears. Like, he even disappears right on camera, like he's a ghost. And this is not the smartest group of people. I mean, even when they're in the lobby, in the beginning, they're looking for a light switch. And the guy in the Nehru jacket turns it on. They're like, oh, you knew where it was. You must have been here before. He's like, yes, I stayed here a whole night 100 years ago. And no one says anything. Patrick's just like, oh, 100 years ago. Well, then you can show us around. And it's really, Patrick's sort of the first one because he's on the stage. We see someone cuts a rope to this beam that will fall, but it misses him, and that's sort of what kicks the domino effect of everyone being killed. And, you know, is it Patrick himself? Does that have something to do with this curse that Patrick slowly unveils, essentially to the audience, but to whomever he's talking to? Is there someone else there with nefarious purposes? Is it the guy in the Nehru jacket who's like this Phantom of the Opera? Not Eric, but, you know, this sort of ghost of the theater. We find out. Now, and it's not a super bloody movie. There is, which, the first actual death is a stabbing that's off screen, which I do like how it's done. Could have potentially inspired Stage Fright by Michelle Soavi, because it involves a character reciting the end of Romeo and Juliet, and then when she dies, everyone claps, but then they find out she actually was stabbed up there in front of them. A little bit of blood there. Most of the other deaths are strangulations, mostly off screen, but there is one death where it's more implied, we don't see it, but where a woman is held down and it's implied that she's stabbed in the genitals repeatedly, and then when she's dead, the killer drags her by the hand, puts her hand up on the wall, and hammers this giant nail into it, which is the picture we get for the cover artwork. And I will say, I like that effect because it's shown up close. And yes, it looks like obvious latex or rubber. I'm sure people will say it looks like crap. I think it gives it charm, but also, like, as he's hammering it, we see the hand kind of close, and then when he's done, it kind of opens back up. I thought that was pretty cool. Even though it looks like obvious latex, they managed to get the effect. It does have some, like I said, some cool shots. Like, eventually when that Othello monologue comes in, and it's just that shot of the dark stage with the curtains. Several shots, like when the killer's chasing someone, and it's just like them running around, like this corner towards the character towards the camera. So we just see the killer coming around the corner. I like that. Of course, it's a Giallo, so you get like the upward shot of someone coming down a spiral staircase. I will say the ending doesn't make a whole lot of sense. it kind of contradicts itself. But, and again, these are not the smartest groups of people, but I enjoyed the film. I'm a sucker for these kinds of Giallo. I mean, I love Killers 1 of 13. It's probably still, might even still be my favorite Giallo, especially from the 4 Forgotten Giallo volumes that we have so far. Yeah, it's not as good as that. The whole curse aspect is not nearly as good as the Red Queen kills 7 times, because that's like a top 3 Giallo for me. But it does have some good fake outs. Like, once the group of people gets down to a certain number, and they realize, well, we're all here, whoever just killed the last person we saw, they look up, and in the soapbox there's a character sort of standing there, and it zooms in, and then right when it gets right on him, he like falls, and we see the rope around his neck. So it kind of makes it look like kind of like a reveal, but then show that he's been killed. Also, when we get this scene, kind of we've seen it done in a number of Gialli that probably was one of the specific inspirations on the slasher, where it shows that bodies are posed or put together to scare the other characters, to show that they've been killed off, which these are the 2 lesbian characters. Spoiler. But other than that, not too much to say about it. We're just kind of waiting for the body count to rise and the group of people to get smaller until it's revealed who the killer is. I would say it kind of made sense who the killer was. Even how they went about it, I didn't really mind. But everything after the reveal is when it kind of stops to making sense, and I'm kind of left with more questions. But the movie as a whole, I actually really enjoyed it. Again, I love Gialli with a number in the title. Killer reserved 9 seats. Is that Agatha Christie limited setting type, and then there were none story, which again, I love the set design. I love the look of the theater. Not too stylish, but you do get some very decent shots. The look of the killer is pretty creepy, but other than that, not much to say. Pre-spoiler, so I guess I'll get to spoilers now. So, but I do recommend this. I know you can watch it for free on YouTube. Some details might be lost on me because a lot of like the bootleg ones like this, with the audio, it is kind of hard to understand them if they're talking kind of fast. And this didn't come with like solid subtitles. It does go back and forth between English and Italian quite a bit, and it has subtitles for the Italian parts. So some things are kind of lost on me. Maybe that's why it seemed kind of confusing, but yeah, you can watch it for free on YouTube. This is one of my favorite types of Giallo, so I really enjoyed it. But so now I'm gonna get into spoilers. So it's after Patrick has that near death with the beam falling on him that they have that group meeting where the motives are all discussed. And then Kim is the one that, because we see that Kim and Russell still have a thing, and that her engagement to Patrick is all a sham. They just want to get his money. But then even Doris, the one that's dating Patrick's sister, makes a move on Kim about trying to convince Patrick to reopen the theater. And they have her do the ending to Romeo and Juliet. So when she does, she's killed on stage. But, and I like how it's done because it's like, she goes like this with the dagger and like slumps over. And even when they're done clapping, she stays like that. It's not until Russell goes up to like talk to her that she falls over. And then like Patrick's sister is the one that gets the vicious like vagina stabbing and the hand nailing. Which Doris gets it first because she gets, I think it's like a set slide or something, but she gets crushed in it. And then those two, because she's actually the one that's nailed. Her arm is up. I actually just don't realize that, but Russell is found hung by like the curtain ropes. Albert, the new husband of Patrick's ex-wife, he's the one that when they're all together, the camera zooms over to him because it does show. There's a scene with Patrick and his ex-wife when she says, yeah, Albert has hated you forever, but she's still in love with him, and they kind of start to reconnect. And it shows them hugging there, and then Patrick's daughter, her boyfriend are here. Zooms up, we see her husband Albert standing there, and that's when it's like the fake out, because when it gets right on top of him, that's when he slumps dead. So yeah, a lot of these kills are off screen, but and then there's separate scenes throughout where Patrick discusses the family curse, which I think in the first scene he says one of his ancestors threw a party, all the guests were locked in, and then when the doors were opened, they were all dead and mutilated. Then much later he's explaining it again. Oh, because also I think it's after Howard, I keep saying Howard because that's the actor's name. After Russell is killed, it's zooming in on Patrick, and he gets these flashes of these paintings on a parchment that he says his family's had for like 500 years. It's all these little paintings that depict the deaths that have happened already. So he says it's either coincidence or has something to do with this parchment. No one really believes it, but that's when he tells his ex-wife, like, it was the February 15th, 100 years ago. Actually, I don't know if he said it was 100 years ago or so many hundred, because they keep bringing attention to 100 years ago, but they showed that this curse has been going on for several hundred. But it might have actually even been 100, talking about the theater massacre itself. About how one of his ancestors was a prince who threw a party and killed everyone in it. And that's when he says, and I realized the date. It's every 100 years. Everything is predetermined. Happens every 100 years on this same date, my birthday. Which he knew this beforehand, but he still chose to have, invite 9 people over. Invite 8 or 9 people over to this one area. But then he kind of turns on his ex-wife. He puts the cloak on, he goes to stab her, but hits like a diamond, piece of jewelry, diamond piece of jewelry. So we know she lives, but we don't see her again till the last scene of the film. But when he realizes what he's done, he comes out of it. So it's all these kills he's done, he's blacked out, he's been taken over by the curse, which I don't mind. I like that. That's different. That kind of makes sense. But when he goes to confess to his daughter, who's been acting weird, because even when they first get there, and everyone's just kind of saying lines. She goes up to Patrick, does this line, and then keeps like kissing him on the lips. At first, I'm like, okay, she's kind of acting. But then later on, when she's all worked up about the murders, her and Duncan take a few Valium, and she's like dancing alone, naked in this room. Patrick comes in, she doesn't cover herself, and he's like, what are you doing? And she's all Valiumed up and says how the murders are hallucination, you're not really my father, and she starts trying to kiss him. And he doesn't seem too fazed by it. But, and that's like right before he goes and kills his ex-wife. But he runs up to his daughter and confesses that he's the killer, but he doesn't remember doing it or how he did it. And it feels like he's lost his mind. That's when she nods to her boyfriend Duncan, who comes up behind him with a rope, kills him. And we find out that Lynn was the one that cut the rope to the beam that almost killed him. Because I think their plan was to just kill him and then inherit his money or something. And the fact that he just went ahead and killed everybody else was more like a bonus. And then we get into the more supernatural stuff. Because earlier there was a scene where Patrick he sees the guy in the narrow jacket, and he's like, all right, who are you and what's going on? And then someone calls his name, and when he turns, we see the guy in the narrow jacket disappears. So we know he's not real. But earlier, Duncan had busted the lock on the door, so he's like, all right, let's get out of here. But when they go to the door, it's put back together. So their only way out is to go down through the catacombs, which this is a cool setting too. I do like this set design. And that's where the guy in the narrow jacket shows up again and says, you know, at first, the curse was that the ancestor that was doing it killed everyone but his only daughter. And he did it out of love, not for a platonic love, but because he had a relationship with her as his lover. And I think he said something about how the fact that she was willing to have her father killed, I guess just for her own needs, it kind of was like the reverse of that curse. So now the curse has been flipped. And this is where it gets confusing, because he says, so now the curse will now descend upon you and your descendants, which I think is the same descendants, unless it changes because she's going to give birth to Duncan's family line. I don't know. Sounds like the same line of descendants to me. And then he says something about until there's like a non-incestuous relationship or something. So like he flips and directs the curse on her, but then they get into this one room where they see all these, where, I don't know if you call them headstones in the walls, or the catacomb walls, of every person in the family that has done this massacre on every 74th year of each century, all the way back to like the 1300s, on the 15th of February. And it looks like an old stone, goes all the way up. We see Patrick's stone, which is brand new. Like, they get more and more modern. Then there's these other two new stones for Lynn and Duncan. And there's no way out. And she screams that she doesn't want to die, then collapses. So I guess they died there. So if they died there, where are the descendants that will carry this curse? I don't know. And then we just see Vivian, the ex-wife, wake up, because I guess when he stabbed that pendant, it knocked her out. She goes down to the theater, she cries, and like this wood panel along the wall opens, goes directly outside. She goes out, and it's the end of the movie. So, yeah, I kind of had questions about the ending itself. It seems like it's contradicting itself, or they were trying to add more twists and more scares, because it is kind of creepy of like a twist ending to see, you know, after what you've done, your own headstone is there and your fate has been sealed. But it seems like they're trying to do too many twists to the point where they kind of counteracted each other. But I love these kinds of mysteries. The Agatha Christie, you know, so one house or one room, one setting, group of people. The levels of how well these people know each other varies from story to story, but you know, I did really enjoy this. It's not as well written as Killers 1 of 13, but it's still enjoyable. It does drag at parts, but it doesn't have the strongest pacing, but the more it goes on, you know, the more tighter it gets. It has a couple good kills. Again, mostly they're off screen or they're strangulations, but it does have that one vicious kill, which again is more implication with the stabbings. But you know, we see him nail that a rubber hand to the wall. And yeah, not the smartest group of people, but love the set design. I love the look of the theater. It is kind of atmospheric, because especially during like the Othello monologue, there are parts like where it will show different characters in different areas of the theater, and it does have this echoey effect that does kind of show this big open acoustic area. So it's still competently and well made. Just the writing might not be the strongest. The acting isn't the best either. In fact, even when Duncan and Lynn see that the door lock has kind of fixed itself, he has like this spaz out moment that's kind of laughable. Actually, everyone kind of has a scene, or not everyone, but a few of them have a scene that kind of rivals the bastard scene from Pieces. But yeah, I enjoyed this. This is, again, one of my favorite categories of Giallo. And for all its flaws, I actually did enjoy it quite a bit. So this is the 5th one I've done from Trash Palace. I have 4 more left. So stay tuned for those. And, oh, this is also my 110th Giallo review. So yeah, way back when I first started doing Giallo reviews again, this past June. It's now late January, but at the end of this past June, I had only done 16 Giallo reviews. Now this is my 110th, so done quite a bit. But anyway, stay tuned for those ones that are coming, and thank you for watching.